What's up guys, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the iPad Air and seeing what's new and what has changed from the previous versions of the iPad, from the iPad 2 to the iPad 3 to the iPad 4. Let's do this. First up, let's compare the designs. The iPad Air has an all-new design which is much like the iPad mini except a bigger version of it, and it's also thinner, lighter, and smaller than the previous versions of the bigger iPads. The iPad Air comes in at 9.4 inches by 6.6 inches. The iPad 2, 3, and 4 all have the same design and the same size, coming in at 9.5 by 7.31 inches. And just for reference, I threw in the first generation iPad, which you see has a different design and is also beat up a little bit. Now, as far as thickness, the iPad 2 comes in at 0.34 of an inch, the iPad 3 and 4 come in at 0.37 of an inch, and the iPad Air coming in at the smallest of all is 0.29 of an inch. And the weight between all the iPads also varies. The iPad 2 comes in at 1.33 pounds, the iPad 3 comes in at 1.44 pounds. Unfortunately, I don't have the iPad 4, but it comes in at 1.46 pounds, and the iPad Air, again, lightest of all, comes in exactly 1 pound. So as far as design, the iPad Air just kicks the other iPad's butt. It's smaller, it's lighter, it's thinner, and the design itself is just better in my opinion. It feels better in your hands and it just looks prettier. As far as the display, the iPad 3, 4, and the new iPad Air all have the Retina display, which is 2048 by 1536 with 264 pixels per inch. And the iPad 2 has a non-Retina display, which is 1024 by 768 with 132 pixels per inch. And now the fun part, let's cover the specs, what makes these things fast. The iPad 2 has Apple's A5 processor, the iPad 3 has Apple's A5X processor, and the iPad 4, which again I don't have, has Apple's A6X chip, and the new iPad Air has Apple's A7 chip, which is a 64-bit chip and runs at 1.4 gigahertz, which is actually 100 gigahertz faster than the iPhone 5S, which has the same chip. Also, it has the M7 motion coprocessor, which handles things like the accelerometer, gyroscope, and compass. Now, I'm not doing a speed test comparison in this video. That will be for a separate video, so make sure you guys go check that out on my channel. But looking at the benchmarks from the iPad 2 to the new iPad Air, the iPad Air blows the rest of them out of the water. The iPad Air actually performs 80% better than the iPad 4, and it just kills the iPad 2 and the iPad 3 in performance. Now let's take a look at how the cameras have evolved. The front-facing camera on the iPad 2 and 3 are the same. It's 0.3 megapixels and it's VGA quality, whereas the iPad 4 and the new iPad Air have a 1.2 megapixel 720p HD front-facing camera. Moving on to the back-facing cameras, the iPad 2 has a camera that shoots 720p HD video and takes 960 by 720 pictures. The iPad 3 and 4 have the same camera on the back, which is 5 megapixels and shoots 1080p HD video. And the camera in the iPad Air is the same as the 3 and 4, except it has the new 5-element lens and the hybrid IR filter, which overall will actually make your pictures look a lot better because it's a better lens. As far as software, the iPad 2, 3, 4, and the new iPad Air will all run iOS 7, which I actually don't have on either of these iPads, the 2 or 3, but you can update to them if you want to. The only iPad you can update to iOS 7 is the iPad first generation. But one thing to note about the iPad 2, even if you update it to iOS 7, it does not have Siri. Moving on to battery life, the iPad 2, 3, and 4 will all give you 10 hours of usage, whereas the new iPad Air will actually give you 11 hours of usage. So that's pretty nice about the iPad Air. Even though it's smaller and thinner, you still get an extra hour of battery life compared to all the other models of the iPad. Now, a nice new feature in the iPad Air, which I've hardly heard anyone mention, is it has stereo speakers. So there's a speaker on the left and right, whereas the previous versions of the iPad only have one speaker, which is mono. The stereo speakers make the audio on the iPad Air sound a lot better, plus it's more even out because you've got speakers on both sides rather than just one side. And of course, we can't go on without talking about the colors. The iPad 2, 3, and 4 all come in white and black and have the same silver metal looking back to it, whereas the new iPad Air comes in space gray and the white/silver model. And on the iPad Air, it doesn't just change the front of the device, it actually changes the back plate too. As you see, I've got the space gray here, which I think looks really nice, or I could have went with the white/silver and this would all have been silver on the back. And now let's talk about pricing and availability. The iPad Air starts at a price of $500, which will get you a 16GB Wi-Fi model. You can also, of course, get the the LTE model or upgrade it to 32, 64, or 128 gigabytes, which will bump up the price. Unfortunately, Apple actually discontinued the iPad 3 and 4 and doesn't sell it anymore. Of course, you can still find them online for used and probably new, but as far as Apple's price and if they're selling it, they don't. Moving on to the iPad 2, which Apple decided to keep selling, you can get it for a price of $400, which I think is a little bit too expensive. That's going to be a 16 gigabyte Wi-Fi model. You can also get the 3G version, but the iPad 2 only comes in 16 gigabytes. But before you buy the iPad 2 from Apple for $400, I would suggest you look online because you can find it cheaper on Amazon. I'll put links down below, and I'm guessing you can also find the iPad 3 and 4 somewhere around the same price as that, and I would definitely suggest getting one of those before the iPad 2. Alright, there you go. Hopefully this video helped you figure out what's new in the iPad Air compared to all the previous versions of the iPad, and maybe give you an idea of if you should upgrade to the new Air. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you click the like button down below. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel right there so you don't miss any of my future videos, and check out all the other videos I'm doing on the new iPad Air and coming up later this month, the new iPad Mini Retina. Plus lots of other tech videos. Again, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of those. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.